Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, a show on national television about India's foreign policy, India's important diplomatic partnerships around the world, and major challenges that India faces in terms of the international economic and security environment. Viewers, in this episode, we are taking up a very nettlesome and problematic neighbor of India, Pakistan. Pakistan, perpetually mired in crises, seems to be sinking deeper and deeper into a morass. And this has major implications for regional security as well as for India, which has to contend with the negative externalities of what is happening in our western neighborhood. So, to discuss this important topic, I have a very distinguished guest in the studio with me, Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain. General Hasnain is a decorated officer of the Indian Army, military scholar and writer of great acumen. He commanded the 15th Corps of the Indian Army in Jammu and Kashmir and has held very important positions. He is also Chancellor of the Central University in Kashmir. So, General Hasnain, thank you for being with me here today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaulia. It's a pleasure actually to be on your show.
General, when we talk about crisis and Pakistan, it's almost as if these are synonymous words. And we would like them to be stable and perhaps move in a democratic direction, but they seem to be regressing rather than progressing. And recent developments suggest that there's like a double whammy. On one hand, they have serious economic crisis. On the other hand, they have almost total political dysfunction. And more and more questions being raised. People use the term failed state or failing state often for Pakistan. But it does look like they are going in that direction, and the economic crisis especially has hammered ordinary people very hard. You know, more than 200 million people, they deserve better, but they are not getting the kind of governance and the kind of stability and economic progress that they need. So, your thoughts on this crisis-ridden country, this neighbor of ours, and why it seems to be going further backward and how dangerous this is?
Well, I'm sure most of our viewers would agree with me, Dr. Chaulia, that right from the inception in 1947, Pakistan somehow did not choose to include economics as an element of its comprehensive security. Somehow they chose ideology, they chose the military domain and things like that. It is their strategic location, the geostrategic location, which is very, very crucial, as we all understand, you know, at the crossroads of civilizations, at the crossroads of the ocean, the northern portion of the Indian Ocean, the routes leading into Central Asia, etc. So, somehow they felt that being a part of the international security matrix, part of CETO, CENTO, etc., they would themselves automatically do extremely well as far as their strategic domain is concerned. India, on the other hand, chose economics as the main domain on which to focus. And you found that Pakistan has not developed that culture right through. I think symbolically, one of the best examples is that even in the Imran Khan government, when Mr. Atif Mia, a very, very prominent, eminent economist, international economist, was selected to be the economic advisor, it is under pressure of many radicals within Pakistan that he was removed from the appointment.
Yeah.
And they gave priority to radicals rather than to an educated, evolved economist who was a Pakistani, primarily because he was a Qadiani. Just because of his faith and his belief. So, this actually really signifies the manner in which Pakistan's philosophical aspects of its existence continue to remain where they are, rooted in 1947. They haven't evolved beyond that. 1991, you saw India. The moment the Cold War ended, the opportunities came our way and how we changed. Pakistan had similar
and we left them far behind. So, misguided priorities definitely explains this.
Absolutely.
And there is also, you know, the military, the so-called establishment, and as you know, it's a highly politicized military, not a professional one, and they dominate almost all the commanding heights of the economy, and they exploit the economy at the expense of the middle classes and the working poor.
Absolutely.
And they, I think, obstruct reform, right? And that's the fundamental problem with the Pakistani economy, why it is always in doldrums or getting worse. Now it has been bailed out for the 22nd time by the IMF.
Absolutely.
And yet, and they have loans. The debt portfolio of Pakistan, 30% is just held by one country, which is China.
Absolutely.
So they, at the expense of the country, The military has been ruling the roost and has been really taking them down, and yet there is no change or systemic or revolt to overthrow this bad
The
system.
entire issue of haves and have-nots, which we talk about anywhere in the world where there is poverty, I think there can't be a better example than Pakistan itself, where you have a pyramid in which right at the top there are a few elements who are extremely rich, and down below you have poverty everywhere. I think nothing can be better classified by the fact that Fauji Foundation, the Pakistan army, I think they inherited some amount of money. I think about 40 lakh rupees or so is reputed to have been inherited from India at the time of partition. Today, you can't even quote the figures of the kind of money which the Fauji Foundation has got and the domains in which they are involved.
Yeah.
Breakfast cereal, for example.
Despite
every
lacking the
possible
competence,
thing.
they are highly incompetent, and yet they control everything.
Everything, almost.
Viewers, I have a very interesting report for you about the political dysfunction in Pakistan, which in many ways feeds into the economic failure as well, and how these two are connected. Let's watch this and then continue the discussion.
On October 27, an unprecedented press conference was held by the ISI chief to clarify the Pakistan Army's position regarding former Prime Minister Imran Khan's politics, and to deny Army Chief Qamar Javed Bajwa's involvement in removing the popular former Pakistan cricket legend from the top job. A week later, former cricketer turned politician Imran Khan was shot in the leg in an assassination attempt while leading the long march of his supporters in Punjab's Wazirabad. To make matters worse, the Shahbaz Sharif-led Pakistan government immediately gagged Pakistani media from telecasting any speeches or press conferences of Imran Khan. What were they trying to hide? There is a clear and increasing rift between Imran Khan and the Pakistan Army since he was removed as Prime Minister in a parliamentary confidence vote in April. Imran Khan had alleged that the deep state forces in Pakistan had entered into a conspiracy to remove him as Prime Minister. The Pakistan Army and spy agencies, the ISI, and military intelligence play a significant role in Pakistan's politics. Shadowy deals made with political parties, the judiciary, religious extremists, and terrorist groups have been widely exposed. It is this political culture that Imran Khan has been able to successfully exploit, either as a full participant and leader, or, since his removal from power, as critic and staunch opponent. Imran Khan, in his current role as critic of the ruling powers, is managing to rally support for his movement for Hakiki Azadi, or real freedom. Khan's aim, and the reason for this long march in Wazirabad, was to disrupt the status quo, force an early election and return to power, and to compel the army and the ISI to be supportive of his ambitions.
Viewers, you just got a snapshot of the deep political logjam in Pakistan, where a former protege of the military establishment, General Hasnain, Imran Khan, came to power riding on the coattails of the military. They cleared the way, and now he is turned against them, and some are of the view that this may be a breaking point because he has gone so public, accusing the military establishment of all the foul things that they do. And on the other hand, you have this joint unprecedented joint press conference where the army and the ISI leaders came on to the public, and they even said that what kind of politician is Imran Khan. He tries to coax and cajole us and talk with us late into the night, and then next morning he comes out accusing us. So this drama that we are seeing, obviously we don't know the full extent of a full picture of what is really going on behind the scenes, but it's a classic symptom of this failure that we're talking about, right? I mean, there's no governance, and the civil military rift or the balance which is heavily loaded in favor of the military remains that way, but it looks like something has got to give and the pressure is building. So it's an explosive situation. Some have even said there could be civil war in Pakistan. So how do you think this situation is evolving, and what can be done about this perpetual crisis mode, which seems to be reaching some kind of a edge of the precipice.
As to your second last comment, Dr. Chaulia, this aspect of civil war in Pakistan, I somehow always feel very apprehensive of the fact Islam remains a very major unifier in Pakistan. And whenever there is a crisis, the clarion call for Islam will somehow unify Pakistan to the extent required. And this may not necessarily happen, although the threat will always remain. But coming back to the main issue as to what really is happening in Pakistan, I think Pakistan has had a failure of leadership, strategic leadership. They don't have the capability. The military, which assumes power and considers itself as the all in all there, does not have the capability to look at this whole issue comprehensively. They look at it more from a military strategic angle more than anything else. They've experimented with various political parties, and finally they experimented with Imran Khan. Imran Khan initially was an appointed prime minister, or what is called a selected prime minister, and then turned rogue. And he decided to actually start, plotting himself out and resisting the army, hoping that probably he will be able to catch the streets. What's happening in Islamabad and Rawalpindi, the Long March, etc., is an attempt essentially to reach out into the streets. But let me take you back in history. The last time Pakistan's civil society actually revolted and did something against the army was 1968. If you remember, the loss in the war in 1965, which Ayub Khan was trying to project as a victory, led to a civil society movement in 68. But although they overthrew Ayub Khan, it is Yahya Khan who came back to power. So civil society in Pakistan has somehow never been allowed to flower out. And this is one of the reasons why you find the military, although it may not be in power, it may not be in government, but it will always be holding the strings from behind, right? And until that gets loosened, nothing is going to change. Imran Khan was attempting to do that, attempting to do it in a very negative kind of way, bringing in greater Islamization, perhaps creating divisions within the Pakistan army. And the press conference that you saw was essentially a response from the Pakistan army to make sure that their ranks do not get divided too.
So
they wanted to go to the public.
So they are scared.
Yeah, they are. No, there's no doubt about it that Imran Khan's popularity has, to an extent, scared the Pakistan army, because even if you see the results in Punjab, because Imran Khan's domain is really not Punjab, but if you see some of the recent by-elections, he's actually been winning in Punjab. So this has created even more confusion. And the lead up to perhaps July next year, when the elections finally take place, is going to be full of turbulence.
Full of turbulence.
Full of turbulence.
And General, this has, of course, major security ramifications and implications. I mean, the attacks by the so-called Pakistan Taliban, TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban, those have increased along the Afghan border on both sides. So even though the Afghan Taliban captured power in Kabul and the military headquarters in Rawalpindi was celebrating that it's a great strategic victory for them, it turns out that there have been major border clashes since Taliban took over. So it's not working so well even as per their diabolical plans of strategic depth. And now the Baloch insurgency has risen. There are so many attacks you keep hearing across Pakistan, and they are unable to stop this negative spiral from getting worse and worse. So clearly the dysfunction and the elite infighting and all these things that we are seeing now, which has come into the open, the deep state is not able to control the situation.
You see, you may recall that from 2014 to 2018, Pakistan was involved, or the Pakistan army was involved in a major operation called Zarb-e-Azm. 4 years in which 1/3 of the Pakistan army was actually deployed in counterinsurgency, counter-terror operations, right?
Against their own citizens.
Against their own citizens. And everyone knows the kind of weapons they used against their citizens.
Air power,
the kind of tactics they used, etc. Okay, this was a successful operation. But success in CICT operations of this kind does not count until you have actually got the people on your side. The people never came on their side. I think the recent manifestation of events which you're finding, General Bajwa going to Washington for spending 7 days there, the Americans suddenly changing tack. in the last 2 months or so, suddenly the $450 million support for the F-16 refurbishment coming back to make some good noises about Pakistan is a worry which the Americans are concerned about. That is, if Pakistan implodes,
Yes.
and its effect on Afghanistan, its effect on Central Asia. You may just recall that the implosion of Syria, 24 million people, led to the
Devastated
kind
the
of
whole
effects in Europe, in America.
Yeah.
Here there are 200 million people.
Yeah.
And an implosion in Pakistan, where is the effect going to travel? Besides India, so many other places.
And general, it's not only the Americans, it seems even the Chinese are now extremely petrified because they have committed to over $60 billion as part of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. They've in many ways become the master of Pakistan's destiny. And yet, there's so many attacks on Chinese citizens by jihadist groups across Pakistan, of different hues and shades. And the security of their own investments is not at all guaranteed. And the Chinese are apparently even trying to enforce some kind of a security presence of their own on Pakistani territory to secure, to protect their own citizens. So that is the kind of situation we are looking at, and it cannot obviously remain confined within boundaries of Pakistan. It looks like there's an inferno.
The Chinese somehow have not read history sufficiently. They should realize that from 1947-48 onwards, it is the United States in the Cold War which came to the support of Pakistan. And yet, with all the economic support they gave them, the kind of strategic support they gave them, at the end of the day, they were still classified as the ugly Americans. The Chinese came on board after 1962 particularly, have been supporting Pakistan in a great way, have not understood Pakistan at all, have not understood Islam. From the simple angle, you can understand that 30 million Uyghur population that they have in Xinjiang, they haven't been able to manage them.
Right.
And they depend on Pakistan for assistance and advice to even handle them at this time. So I think the Chinese are actually betting on the wrong horse, putting $60 billion or more into this into the coffers of Pakistan and expecting to get something out of it. In a dysfunctional state such as Pakistan, I don't think they're going to get the dividends out of it.
Yeah, so counterbalancing India seems to be the Chinese motive, because they've always, the so-called all-weather alliance with Pakistan has been to try and hem India in, but it seems to be going badly. And part of it is what we call the principal agent problem, where the Chinese may have the purse strings and the money, but you have this very unruly child and they're not able to control it at all. Chinese are not there is the so-called a lot of white elephant projects also they are creating, which is exacerbating the debt crisis of Pakistan. For example, there is this Gwadar-Kashgar railway across Pakistani territory and even occupied territories and all the way into Chinese Xinjiang. And that is going nowhere because the implementation on the ground is bad, the security issues. So it's actually a quagmire. It looks like a quagmire for the Chinese, and they're paying dearly for it. But viewers, India is of course watching with great concern with all this chaos and anarchy and disorder in Pakistan. And let's listen to India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval talking about what India's policy options are and how it is viewing the situation across the border.
We cannot have peace and war at the choice of our adversary. If we have to protect our interests, we will decide when and with whom and on what terms we will have peace. When our core interests are involved, there is no question of peace at any cost. There has got to be a peace. We want very good relations with our neighbors, Pakistan included. We would like to have good relations with them, we would like to have very normal relations with them, but certainly the tolerance threshold for terrorism is very low. We certainly would not like to make our citizens as sitting ducks for the terrorists who come and this thing. Thank God, and I think I must this thing to the God. In last 8 years, this country has not seen any terrorist this thing except Jammu and Kashmir, which has been this thing of a proxy war. So it's a different type of a proxy war. Just before that, say between 2005 to 2014, we had Bombay, we had Pune, we had Kanpur, we have got Delhi, we have got this whole range of this, Bangalore, Ahmedabad and other. What was the whole range of this thing the country was being this way? If we were not firm, if we were not very decisive, if we did not have the clarity, we will fight it. And we will not beg for peace, at any terms.
Hard-hitting, response from Mr. Ajit Doval, India's National Security Advisor, viewers, and he's saying we will not go for peace at any cost, and we would like to have good relations with our neighbor. We'd like to normalize ties with them, maybe start even dialogue. But for all that to happen, the conditions are not right. And the general, you have dealt with Pakistan-sponsored cross-border terrorism for so long in your life, right there on the ground, and that aspect, the proxy war, Mr. Doval was saying that thankfully internal security we are doing better now, preventing these random soft target terror attacks. But in the valley, in Kashmir Valley, infiltration bids and all these have not lessened in any significant way. And although we have a ceasefire agreement going back to 2003, which has been renewed in 2021, the problem of infiltration using the cover of Pakistani gunfire and shelling and all that continues to be there, and radicalization of some misguided youth in the valley also is a problem, even though we are now better integrating it. So despite the chaos, despite the near collapse of Pakistan, it seems like this jihad industry, maybe no other industry is as successful as the jihad industry, and that is something that continues to flow and create trouble for us, and therefore we are not ready for any dialogue. So how do you think the economic collapse that we are seeing will lessen or reduce this menace, or actually increase it?
See, Dr. Chaulia, this is situational. And I think when we look at security, national security, we should never presume that a situation is going to be one which is going to be of permanence. So what we are seeing, the current phenomenon today, the failure of Pakistan, the potential collapse of the Pakistani state, all this may change. And the international community would definitely want a stabilization of this region and stabilization of Pakistan itself. Many times the Pakistan army, the Pakistan leadership says that they have no control over the jihadis themselves. To my mind, that is a ploy which they love to use, but they like to actually exploit the jihadis available for creating any kind of turbulence, launching proxy war, initiating these kind of actions. Their whole intent is to keep the state of Jammu and Kashmir and now the rest of India in a state of turbulence, not allow us to settle down. That's the whole idea behind it. Now, to come to one or two specifics, I think one thing that Pakistan doesn't realize is that friendship with India will actually give them the capability to act as a transit into Afghanistan for India, a transit into Central Asia, the kind of economic benefits that they can get. But in their prioritization, making India an adversary, using that tool to continue creating issues within Pakistan internally is the priority rather than economics. Right? As far as the situation within Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, yes, there is radicalization which is there, which we have not been able to fully counter, but we have been able to neutralize it to a great extent. Ceasefire is beneficial to us, definitely to a great extent, because the moment the ceasefire goes up in flames, Pakistan starts using it for internationalizing the whole issue. August, September, every year you find it in the UN General Assembly and things like that. Every other day you'll find it in the media. So to my mind, the ceasefire is actually a beneficial thing. Besides that, the very important aspect we have to remember, and our listeners and our viewers need to remember, is the management of this situation by the current government. The response that we gave at Balakot and before that at the surgical strikes, I think the messaging was very, very adequate. That these kind of acts will not be tolerated. And I think Mr. Doval has really actually recommitted himself to that. That we are not going to tolerate these kind of actions from Pakistan as it may have been done in the past. We will respond. And that should send a sense of caution onto the Pakistan leadership for the future.
General, I hear that the Indian military has a doctrine of punitive deterrence vis-a-vis Pakistan and credible deterrence vis-a-vis China. So punitive deterrence, as you're mentioning, the costs we are raising of their aggression and of their terror, but there is also the view that they are irrational and they don't care for the cost, because the jihadi mindset is that they are willing to sacrifice thousands of young people as human bombs in order to just achieve their goals, or just to out of spite and nothing else, or to the breed for revenge against India. So what should be our posture overall and our approach to Pakistan going forward?
Well, no war, no peace is a phenomenon that we have to contend with for quite some time. There's no doubt about it. But I'd just like to introduce one other aspect here for consideration of our viewers, and that is that Pakistan has suffered a huge climate issue this year. $30 to $40 billion worth of damage in the floods, and more than half of Pakistan has been ravaged by the floods. Now, you may recall that the last time we can trace this whole issue of the jihad factory is back to 1980-81, when 3 million refugees came out of Afghanistan. And they became the Taliban subsequently, and that's where the whole phenomenon of global terror started.
Yep.
The 3 million. Now 2.3 million refugees have come out of this current crisis.
The floods, yeah.
And if this happens every year, you are going to find an implosion of population, and many of these people probably entering into India.
A lot of desperate young people with nothing to do, who could be brainwashed and
this is going to be a major threat to us in the future too. So this is something that we have to contend with. This is a new threat which is emerging, and we got to be careful about this.
Well, viewers, we've got to be careful about this imploding neighbor next door. It's not been a pretty picture at all. India's actually gone ahead with SARC -1. With this now, of course, the Taliban control Afghanistan also become a problem. So maybe it's SARC -2, but essentially all the other neighboring countries, we are in a different dynamic with them, moving forward through neighborhood first and through beneficial economic exchanges. But the vision that General Ata Hasnain has laid out for us, which is of Pakistan as a transit state that can link South Asia with Central Asia, that liberal vision unfortunately lies buried under this conspiratorial deep state and its machinations, and that's not been helpful to anyone. One can only hope that they will find civil military balance, and ultimately people of Pakistan, more than 200 million people, deserve a lot better than what they're getting now. General Ata Hasnain has thrown light on a number of evolving factors, especially the dynamic situation and how we have to deal with this dynamic situation. I want to thank him for sharing his deep insights with us. Thank you, General.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaulia.
Thank you, folks. Do think about failing states, dysfunctional states, and how they can not just go down themselves but bring others down along with them, and how alert and cautious we must be to all these possibilities. I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care.